I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
All right. Well, I live in Utah, and I guess I'll just start right out here with my first experience. I was about 12. I think it was 74, and my uncle took me on a camping trip up in the Uinta Mountains, and they're pretty high up there, up the top where we like to go. You're talking 9,000 to 10,500 feet, and we were at a lake that was probably about 9,000 feet, and I had a cousin that was about the same age as I was, and there was we were just adventurous kids, and there was a mountain that they're all glacier lakes, so there was a mountain that just kind of like sloped right to the shore of the lake, and we decided, we were looking up there, and we thought, well, we're gonna hike to the top of that thing, and at least to this ridge, and it was pretty far up there, and so we started straight up the side of the mountain, and it seemed like we were probably going for maybe 3 hours, somewhere in that area, and we came to this clearing, and the clearing was probably about, I'd say, 40 meters by 40 meters, just an opening in the pines. Everything up there's, lodgepole pine and some Douglas fir, and there's some spruce. I think it's subalpine spruce, if that means anything to anybody. But in this meadow or this clearing, it was all grass, and the grass was probably, 5 feet high, and we couldn't, see anything in there. And we were just hanging back in the tree line, and we both just had this horrible feeling. Honestly, it was, pretty unnerving, and we knew something was out there watching us, and so we were just kind of hanging back in the tree line, trying to figure it out, and we both just decided that it wasn't even wise to even venture in there. So it kind of scared us. We were only kids, and we turned around and we booked it back down the mountain, and there was a dirt road that went past the lake, and we came busting out of the trees, and there was this, I think, like a big Ford four-wheel drive, had a roll bar on the back, and there was a bunch of guys. There was a couple of guys without shirts with long hair standing up in the back of the truck holding on the roll bar, and they saw us come running out of the trees, and they slammed on the brakes, and they started yelling, "Did you see it? Did you see it?" And we're like, "See what?" And they're like, "Bigfoot." And it just caught us off guard, and we didn't really say anything to them, and they just punched it and took off down the dirt road. So we both looked at each other, and my personal feeling is based on other experiences I've had with wildlife up there. I think it was hiding up there in the grass, because in that clearing, because I've had other experiences with, top predators. I told you a story about, I was gold panning. I was working my way up this slot canyon, and, it was sheer cliff, solid rock, quartz veins going through it and stuff, and real narrow. And the river was just, cascading down, and there was a lot of waterfalls. And so I was hiking up that, panning for gold as I went. And, obviously I didn't find much, but that's beside the point. But anyway, so I'm working my way up, and I was traveling light. I had to climb up, waterfalls and stuff, and it was kind of dangerous, and I was by myself. I topped probably the third waterfall, and as I was going up, the walls of the canyon were, 75 feet on both sides, straight up, maybe even 100 in some areas. So, even the bravest mountain lion's not going to make that leap. And but when I topped that third waterfall, had leveled out, and there was this little grove, and it was a narrow, it was still cliffs, but it opened up and flattened out, probably about 30 feet wide or so, and it was about, I don't know, 50 meters ahead of me. So I started walking that way, and all of a sudden I got this, the spidey senses tingling, and so I stopped and I started looking around, trying to figure out what it was, and I noticed on my left the cliffs were getting lower, and they're probably in the 15 to 30 foot high area right there. And I saw a mountain lion creeping its way down, trying to get in position to jump me. And they're pretty hard to see. And so I just backed out of there and went home, and nothing happened. But the reason why I'm telling that is because I run into stuff like that, and I know what my spidey senses were. And what my cousin and I, when we were kids up there in that clearing, what we felt was way different, way more intense. I would say literally it felt evil, or like really malicious, it foreboding. It's almost like the devil was hiding out there somewhere. That's the only way I can explain it. So then my next experience was, I was grown, and my family, my wife and I have done a lot of backpacking trips up there, and my brother-in-law, and I've gone with him several times, and his boys, and taken my son, and we were all up there on a backpacking trip, and we were probably about 9,500 feet up in the high Uinta mountain range, and where it was the second day, and it was in the afternoon, and we went out, decided to go on and explore and hike, and we were hiking around, and my brother-in-law Jim was in the front, I was in the back. We were both armed, and younger guys were in the middle, and we were walking along this, I'd say it was a game trail, and we came to this area where one side was, on the right, was just a cliff. I'm thinking maybe 50 feet high. Could have been a little less than that, but if you were to jump off it, you'd break your legs. And on the left side, there was only about 10 or 15 feet between the edge of that cliff and the brush and the timber, and it was super thick right there. And we were walking along, and all of a sudden I got that same, really dark, menacing spidey sense thing. And, I was with all the guys, and, it's not like we were, hunting VC or anything, so, I kept going for a few more steps, and then it was just too strong, and I stopped, and I hollered to my brother-in-law, hey, we need to turn around. If something's wrong, we need to back out of here. And, I thought they'd all just give me a bunch of crap, and he's just immediately turned around and said, all right, and we went back to camp. And then we were sitting around the fire later that night talking about it, and he said, I'm glad that you said something, because I felt it too, and I was just going to keep going. All right, so that same evil, that's the only way I can describe it. I don't like attaching an emotion like that to an animal, that, he's evil, but that's what it felt like. It felt like really just dark and menacing. And I've thought about it, and I've been back to that place a few times, and if there was like 3 creatures in there, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call them, in that thick brush, you wouldn't be able to see them, and they'd only be like 15 feet away. And so here comes some deer down that trail, and they just wait till it's right in the middle, and the 2 on the ends just bust out of the brush, and then one in the middle. Those deer are going right over the edge of it. And they don't have any room to go anywhere else, and they're gonna, and that reminded me a lot of how 1,000 years ago, or however long ago it was, ancient man, they'd purposely run animals off the cliffs to hunt them, and then they just go down there and get them, and it was pretty effective. That's what it reminded me of. I've been, like I said, I've been back up there since, and around, and I've looked around that area and stuff, and I've never seen any kind of tree structures or any of that kind of stuff. I hadn't even seen any tree breaks, and so, or tracks. In Utah, it's pretty dry. It's one of the driest states in the country. And so when you're up, I used to live in the Pacific Northwest, and when I was in the military, and I got out quite a bit. I had a buddy of mine, and we loved to fly fishing. We'd go up on the Nooksack and hike way up there to where it just petered out, and that place back then was just, there was bears everywhere up there. I mean, I think it was like one bear per square mile back then. I don't know what it is now, but they're everywhere. Run into them, and that stuff didn't scare me, This other two experiences scared the crap out of me. I mean, I never felt anything like that. So then my third experience was probably in 2005, and my wife and I went on a backpacking trip, and we went. It was pretty far away. I mean, we were out in the wilderness area. They even put a sign up that says, warns you, you're on your own, basically, And so we were way out there, and we were at an alpine lake, and it was at 9,500 feet. We set up our camp, and, we do all the normal things, hang our food away from camp so that, if there's any bears, hopefully they won't bug us and stuff. And, we just were going to do fishing. There's a lot of native cutthroats up there, and brook trout. So we're up there fishing the first day, and we just had a blast. And then that night, we were pretty tired from hiking in and all that, and so we were sitting around the campfire and drinking some hot chocolate, and kind of just waiting for the fire to die down. And probably about 11, we went to bed, and we were just in a little Eureka Timberline 2-man tent, and I've had that tent for like 35 years, and it's still going strong. Highly recommend it, but they're kind of heavy compared to what they make nowadays. But anyways, it's not very wide. It's a 2-man tent, so it's probably 5 feet wide, at the most, and probably a little less. And we're in there in our sleeping bags, and my wife passed out. She was tired, and I was just kind of laying there listening to the night sounds and stuff. And I don't even know how to explain it, but I heard it sounded like talking. And we were way out there. I mean, we there's nobody out there. We had the whole lake to ourselves. We never saw anybody on the whole hike in. It was several miles. There's no roads around there, and at all. And I can only describe it as talking, and it was like baritone, way down there. And there was like 4 or 5 syllables, and they were fired off pretty quick. It wasn't like, duh, duh, duh. It was da, 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 it was kind of quick. And I've heard a lot of bears. I've heard all kinds of stuff, I mean, it wasn't a bear, it freaked me out. So I'm laying, I'm laying there all ears, and I'm listening and listening and listening. And when I heard that, I woke my wife up and said, hey, there's something out there. Probably a bear, but I wasn't thinking Sasquatch, or anything like that. I was just, but I've never heard anything like that. And I just wanted her to, be ready in case, didn't have any weapons except for a knife. And, so we're just laying there, and I'm listening, and I mean, it's quiet, and I can't hear anything after I heard that talk, and I couldn't hear anything, and it was probably like 10 minutes went by. And I'm sure you've been around some glacier lakes, and there's no flat spots really to camp around a glacier lake. It's all just a bowl, a lot of rocks. The only flat spot is usually where the water comes in, and you definitely don't want to camp there. It's all soggy, and so we just found the best spot we could, and we're pretty close to the edge of the lake. So up on the ridge to our right, I was sleeping on the left, and my wife was on the right, and I was closest to the water. And then the ridge went up on my wife's right, And thought, so I'm listening intently. I mean, my ears are, zeroed in after hearing that talking. And I mean, total silence, like no footprints, no breathing, nothing. And then all of a sudden I start hearing rocks hitting from up the ridge. And they probably, I'd say they were, I'm just guessing, but they were hitting, probably being thrown from about, 20 meters, like 60 feet, 50, 60 feet. And they were landing up the ridge a little bit. They were landing probably, I don't know, 30 feet from us. And I could hear them hitting, and then they started hitting closer to the tent, And I'm like, what the hell, It's fucking rocks, and they weren't huge rocks. They sounded like, baseball size and maybe golf ball size, somewhere in that area, not big giant boulders or anything. And none of them hit our tent. And that went on for probably about 5 minutes, probably a total of about 6 or 8 rocks. Nothing. Then it was silent again. And I mean, I'm listening, I'm really listening, obviously. I don't hear any footprint, any footsteps, any breathing or anything. And the next thing I know, right next to the tent where my wife's sleeping, I hear what sounds like a giant, like it sounded just like it knelt down on one knee. And as it was kneeling down, it like exhaled, and it was just, I mean, it was a huge exhale. And every time I think about it, I was thinking my stepdad when I was a little kid. He was a contractor, and and when he kneeled down, he made the same noise. And it just, that's the first thing I thought of, but only way bigger. And then after I heard that, okay, it just knelt down right there and let out that exhale, and it was totally silent. It didn't move. I never heard it approach. I mean, not even a twig snap, nothing. Didn't hear it approach. And I knew it was right there, and it was just like it was just listening, or trying to figure out, who was in the tent or what was in the tent, and what I was telling you about how, it's hard to find a flat spot. So that where we were camping, it kind of sloped to my side. And I told my wife, well, I'll take that side and I'll put the backpacks between me and the wall of the tent. So when I slide, I'll be on the backpacks instead of all the way over on the wall of the tent. So we're sitting there or laying there and no sound at all. And that thing came from that side of the tent around to the other side of the tent, which is only like 5 feet, in total silence. No breathing, no footsteps, nothing. And the next thing I know, there's this hand shoving me in my back. And it's rolling me back and forth. And it's just, and I'm rolling. I mean, I'm rolling back and forth, and it's no breathing sounds, nothing. Is the most bizarre thing about it was how completely stealthy it was. And then, so it's like pushing on my back, and I just kept quiet and stayed limp, and about probably a minute, might have been less than a minute, but it seemed like about a minute, it just stopped. And then it was total silence again. And I mean, my ears were tilled, Will. I didn't hear anything. About, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes later after that, in my email, I described it as a booming tree knock, but to be honest with you, it sounded like a gunshot almost. I mean, it was like, have you ever, well, you've been all over probably, up in the woods and stuff, up in the Pacific Northwest, things are a little wetter, but like up in Utah, you'll have this big old gnarly pine tree that's fallen laying on the ground. It's dry. It's got these twisty branches coming off, and you're collecting firewood, and and you're trying to break them off, and you find one that's about 3 inches in diameter, and when you put all your weight into it, it just pop, That's what it sounded like, only super, super loud. So it was either it just grabbed some branch and just ripped it off the tree, or it smacked it like a tree knock, So I couldn't tell you, but it sounded like a gun going off. It was loud. But, I know the difference between a gunshot, but it was a sharp bang like that, And then we didn't hear anything at all. And in and I hardly even slept. In the morning we got up and I told my wife, I said, get your shit, get your pack. We're getting the heck out of here, I mean, it was bad. And I've been up there my whole life, and I've been up there by myself and, and it's freaking scared me. Right. So we're packing up and I'm kind of looking around, for tracks, but not really that hard because we just wanted to get out of there. And it's really dry up there. So, unless it rains or something, you're not going to see hardly any tracks around up there. You see deer tracks and stuff, but, it's hard to even find a bear track because it's so dry and it's pretty hard, most of the soil is pretty hard. And, so, we got out of there and, the whole way back, my wife was bawling. She was freaked out. And, that's not her first rodeo either, And, so, like I've been fishing up and, we used to go up on the Nooksack. I think I told you that. And, we'd come around the bend and those rock fields up. Yeah, we'd go all the way up to those where the boulder fields are, and then it turns into all these little offshoots, and they all finally make their way back into the main river. But and there's a lot of bears up there. You'd come around the bend, and there'd be a black bear, and I've heard them. I know what it sounds like when I'm, and there's females and they got cubs, and they start, jaw popping, and they moan, you can hear some weird sounds from bears and all that, but nothing like what I heard. All I can say, I lived in Arizona. I used to go up on the Mogollon Rim a lot, and I did some work up on the Apache reservation up there in Globe, Arizona. And listening to those guys talk, it kind of sounded almost like sort of like a native tongue, you know what I mean? But it wasn't, and it was real guttural and it was real raspy, like an old guy talking, real raspy. But the talking, I'd say, I think I know what direction it came from, and there's if you're coming down where the little stream trickles in and feeds that lake, I think it came down that way. So I'm saying probably, I don't know, 30 yards, just enough to where it probably saw our tent coming down that hill, and came around there and saw our tent and let out the thing, which leads me to believe there was more than one. Yeah, because I never heard them. I mean, you would think, you never want a black bear coming around your tent at night. But when they do, you can hear them. I mean, they're breathing, and you just smack the wall of your tent. Most of the time, they'll just get out of there, or, my brother-in-law got up in the morning, unzipped his tent, and there was one sitting right in front of the door of his tent, Yeah, looking in the stream, wasn't looking in their tent. It was looking the other direction. And, but you can usually hear them, and I know that, if they're hiding, they're quiet, but not when they're sniffing around. So, I'm confident that it wasn't a bear, and there's nothing else up there. you know, that big, you know, and this sounded like way big, you know. I mean, just that one breath that it let out when it knelt down next to my tent was huge. And it was an exhale, just like just like a man kneeling down and letting out air when he kneels down on one knee. So, you know, and up in Utah, you know, I've got a couple of like, just, I don't know if you'd call them insights, but like, you know, up in the Pacific Northwest, you know, the black bears, a lot of them are black, you know. In Utah, they're pretty rare to be black. You know, there's some blondes, there's a lot of brown, some cinnamon color, some that are black, but they've got like patches of lighter hair on their sides and stuff. So a true black bear is kind of rare here, at least from what I've seen. And they're running, you know, 200 to 400 pounds, that area, most of them, you know, average. And, but when you know, I hear a lot of people say that, you know, I saw it and it was black. Sasquatch was black, you know, but those brown ones, when they get in the woods and it's dark in there and kind of shady and stuff, they look black. Yeah. And then, you know, when they come out in the light, you know, that thing's brown. So you know, they could be any color is what I'm saying, pretty much, you know. And, I've thought about the cannibal thing, you know. You know, when I was thinking, you know, that means they eat humans, but no, that means they eat each other. Because I don't think they are human. I would call them an animal, but I think there's a little more to them. There's probably some human DNA in them somewhere, and that's just my opinion. And I don't have anything to base that on. But I wouldn't be surprised because of their level of intelligence. But that, you know, I mean, there's other animals that are intelligent in their own ways. But the cannibal thing, you know, that kind of would, you know, help explain why you don't find much of them. And, you know, you're not finding a lot of dead bodies or anything. You know, I'd say they're probably pretty opportunistic feeders. That's, you know, I wouldn't put it past them to eat some roadkill, you know. I mean, bears, you know, they'll kill something and eat on it for a week, you know, in the summer. So I can see that same thing. And I definitely would think that, you know, if the opportunity arose and they were hungry, they'd eat one of us, no problem. You know, yeah, you know, and
yeah, and a couple of them. Dan,
Yeah.
First thing I want to say, not Dan, I'm sorry, Tony, is your story is just fascinating and really interesting, all these encounters. And the one thing I really keyed in on is the one thing I key in on so many of these accounts, and that is, you know, the feeling of dread. You don't see anything, you don't hear anything, but you just get a sense. You said it right, you know, your spidey sense. But you also mentioned, if I understood correctly, you also got a spidey sense for the mountain lion. Is that right?
That's correct. And that mountain lion, I mean, that was nothing compared to these other encounters. Those other, I'd say, you know, it'd be the difference between running into a 14-year-old punk with a pocket knife and running into a, you know,
Charles
Rambo
Manson.
with a freaking machete or something. I mean, it was like, you know, the spidey sense level. You know, I was never, you know, serving my country in the bush, and you know, somebody was trying to get me, so I can't compare it to that. But
Yeah.
I can tell you this much, that it was pretty dang evil. Like,
Yeah, that's what a lot of people say. It just is a real deep-seated sense of dread and foreboding.
and I don't understand that. Because I mean, bears, you know, bears, you know, they're just bears. They're out there, and, you know, if they're hungry, they're going to eat somebody, you know, if they get a chance, you know, if they're hungry. But there's no ill intent. They're just hungry. You know, they're not evil-minded or anything like that. And there's something different about these, though. There's something more to it. There's, I'm not trying to attach any like supernatural stuff to it. I think they're an animal. That makes the most sense.
I I don't know what causes it either. The two most plausible explanations that make sense to me, because I need something tangible, something physical. And Will, you can let me know if I'm maybe on the right track or kind of derailed here. But number one would be the possibility of some sort of infrasound that affects us. And the other was somebody that Will had known that just sort of thought out loud, maybe pheromones. So
say that last word again.
Pheromones.
Could be. I'd say that both of those are in the likely category. I'd say also they may have some kind of, I don't want to say telepathic, but it might just because it's a higher functioning being, it might have a little more brain power to where it's putting out, it's like more like a person trying to kill you or something. I don't know. I'm only speculating, but I think that the pheromone thing I think makes a lot of sense, and also the infrasound. Either one of those, I'd say, just based on my knowledge, I'd be leaning towards the pheromone.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, and it's there's still a lot to be learned. But see, that's one thing that I like about what you're doing, Will, is I mentioned it in my emails. A lot of most of the other sources out there is just sensationalism. They want if you didn't see it, they don't want to hear it. They're looking for the most fantastical story they can to grab their audience, and you are more scientific because of who you came up with. So you're going, oh, okay, I got to hear what this person has to say, because even if it fills in a small gap in our knowledge, and you're willing to take the time to do that, and you don't jump to conclusions, but you have a lot of experience. You're not an armchair. You're out there. You're dealing with it. You came up with the big boys back in the day, and have a lot of respect for you, and I'm sure that everybody else does too, and so it's pretty cool getting to talk to you. Honestly, I consider it a privilege. Yeah, well, it's called the difference between Pokemon hunting and research. Right? Yeah, that's like that show on TV should be called Finding Pokemon. So
you took the words out of my mouth as far as
yeah, they can't even find that. Yeah.
Well, they found cameras. Okay, yeah, a lot of ruckus and a lot of noise out in the woods, and a commotion with cameras. Some strange reason that didn't seem to attract these creatures.
Yeah, they make it look like there's two people out there wandering the woods, and there's like 50 people probably following them with microphones and cameras, and So yeah, anybody that's ever hunted even squirrels knows that's not going to work. So, but yeah, it's it's a fascinating topic. I was always a skeptic. Like when I was a little kid, the first thing I ever heard about Bigfoot was, we were in elementary school, and your parents could buy these movie tickets for like $7, and they were on a sheet of paper, and ours were always green. I remember that. And you'd tear the bottom one off, and then your mom would drive you down to we used to go to the Villa Theater down in Salt Lake and drop you off on Saturday with all your friends. And it was just a big kids movie day in there, and you'd watch old Tarzan movies and for a couple hours. And they had that Don Knotts, The Ghost with Mr. Chicken. And we used to laugh so hard at that movie, when we were little kids. And then one time I went there, and they had I don't know if it was insert. I don't know what it was, but anyways, they had the Patterson Gimlin film, and that's was my first exposure to Bigfoot. And I think they might have, talked about some other mysteries, and they had that, and I looked at that and I was like, wow, that's pretty neat. But then I just kind of forgot about it. I was only like, 9 or 10, and then the next time any exposure to was, I think, the $6 Million Man, and they had that Bigfoot on there, I never really spent a lot of time thinking about it until even when I was a kid and I had that, when those, with my cousin and the guys are, they're out there, tearing around the mountainside trying to cut off Bigfoot, it really didn't register, I was still a kid, but after I had that experience with my brother-in-law and then the one with my wife, those scared me.
Hey,
And
Tony,
I
wonder
spent,
if your wife, this is Tom. I got a quick question for you. Did she hear anything, and what was her experience with this creature?
my wife didn't hear the talking because she was already asleep, and she will not discuss it. She does not like even me bringing it up, and I think it scared her. And she doesn't want to. I don't think she wants to think about there actually being something like that out there,
Well,
So she really just doesn't talk to me. When it first happened, she, just wanted to get out of there, and she pretty much cried the whole way home, hiking out of there. She was scared.
yeah.
And isn't that funny? Hollywood grit, I think it's hilarious. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all, And
Well, they were capitalizing on the publicity and the interest in the topic.
yeah. And it was like, I think the $6 Million Man and Bigfoot kind of like had an eye to eye mutual understanding moment at the end of that or something. It was just funny. I'm scared up there. And I was just up there like about 3 weeks ago, same area, tent camping, and I was not comfortable. And it's been, 13 years since my last experience up there. And, my brother-in-law, he's got his youngest is 14, and he will not let him out of his sight up there. Yeah.
It does. It increases your situational awareness when you go out in the woods after that, doesn't it?
Oh man, I'm not even comfortable up there anymore. Like I'll sit around the fire and stuff, but my head's on a swivel, and I'm looking around and listening. And then every time I get in my sleeping bag in my tent, it all comes back. And I'm like, oh God, I hope that, nothing like that ever happens again. Cause I'm a vet. I did, over a decade of service honorably. And, I've seen a few things, and that's scared the crap out of me. I mean, when I got home, the first guy that I told the story to, I was shaking like a leaf, telling him about it. And I served from 81 to 94. Man, so the last thing I did was I was in the Navy, so right after that Black Hawk Down thing happened over in Seattle, over in, I can't think of it. Huh? Yeah, Somalia. That's what I was trying to say. And, the Army guys got in a real bind over there. And we were over in the Persian Gulf. And so we booked it over there. And got there like a couple days later, and we did air cover for them and stuff. And I was just glad I wasn't one of those guys. That was hardcore. So anyway, I'm not saying I'm Rambo or some Green Beret or anything like that. But I've had plenty of things in my life, that are, and I used to go up camping and just totally be relaxed. Like I, sleep without even sleeping in a tent or whatever. Now it's like, I want to be inside of I bought a camp trailer because of the walls. I was like, I'm serious. It freaked me out. It took, I bet. Well, somebody like you, you've got a lot more, knowledge and, stories and everything else that, you'd think it'd make you a little lackadaisical, but not, I know you've had an encounter and there's no way you're going to be lackadaisical after that at all. Yeah. I just don't even feel comfortable. I still go because I've loved it so much my whole life. I still go, but there's no way that I would go up there by myself anymore. No way. And never unarmed. And to be honest with you, like I was saying, a bear is just a bear. And if he's starving to death and he sees a guy and he thinks he's got a chance, he's gonna, do what he needs to do to survive. But there's no maliciousness to it or anything, and so you're walking around up there with your lever action 45-70, and that bear's charging and you let him have it and he drops. 5 more of them are going to come out of the bushes and grab you by the legs and smash you against a tree and stomp you to pulp. It's a whole different ball game. So, I just don't feel even armed. I don't feel safe up there like I used to. And it's kind of sad, but I still go. And I think in my email, there's a guy that the hunt just ended, and a guy from West Virginia came up, and they were up in that same area, and he just disappeared. He's gone, and they've searched for him. It's been like a couple weeks now, and I feel for his family and stuff, but they're not going to find him till spring if they even find him, because it's snowing up there, and and I just, who knows what happened to him. I'm not saying Sasquatch got him, but I'm just saying, just going, huh? No, he was with a group, and then he just got up in the morning and said, "Hey, I'm just going to go a little ways up here and, do a little hunting," and then he never came back, and the search started, and they looked for him for about 3 days, and it started snowing, and they won't find him till spring if they even do. And and they looked, how
that happens
far
a
could
lot.
they go?
You get somebody who's with a group and somebody says, "Well, I'm just going to go down here and I'll be back in a little bit." You never see him again.
Well, guys like,
it's a mystery.
huh?
It's a mystery. You don't know. That's
No, heck no.
tragic. There's no closure.
And there's a lot of that goes on up there. We had 2 Boy Scouts. 2 of them went missing, and they found one, and they still haven't found the other one. And he was in line of sight, walking back. He got his shoes wet, and his dad sent him back to camp to change his socks or something, and he could see him the whole way. And he turned around, and didn't see him, and kid's gone. Wow. I don't know where he's at, and that was, it happens a lot up there. And so my point of saying that is, the Pokemon hunters, it's like, they don't understand that, if there was no animals at all up there, it's dangerous still. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're asking for it,
Yeah, that's exactly right. I tell people that, there's places in the wilderness. It doesn't matter. You're right. Even if there's no animals up there, if you have a mechanical breakdown, nobody goes into that area. You're in a remote, isolated.
It's so easy to get lost in those places.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even worse up in up where, you guys do your stump, and up in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, around here, it doesn't rain as much, and so, you're walking through lodgepole pine forest, and you're stepping over a big log once in a while. Up there, I mean, it's like a major effort to go off trail around there. I mean, it's not easy, and you get lost. Yeah, it's a lot different. A lot thicker And so it's just sad, that. So I'm, I just, you go up there, you have to respect it. And then, when you factor in the wildlife up there, and if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to turn out bad a lot of times. That guy probably either had health issues or, the bears are still out in sort of the mountain lines. They're getting ready to go to bed. But,
Well, Tony, you're right. I mean, you got layers of complexity. You had the first layer, like you said, no animals, but just the location itself offers some dangerous challenges. And then you add in, and you can fall. You can have a 4-foot fall.
yeah.
That's fatal.
Yeah.
Kill you.
Yeah. But for me, I'm usually, all the time I'm armed now when I go up there, but I just don't feel like, if I ever had an encounter, face-to-face encounter, I know that, even if I had like I said, a 45-70 and I dropped one, I'm going to be like hauling ass out of there, praying to God the rest of them don't get me. You know what I mean? Because I'm pretty sure that I'm sure there's probably some lone ones, but they have loose family ties, and and hunting, it makes more sense to hunt in a group, and you're more likely to get something, and I think they're nomadic as well. I think, I don't think they just, oh, this is a nice place to live, let's stay here all summer. I think they're moving. Yeah. And so if there's people in an area they're used to, that they're like, there's plenty of other places they can go, and they know them, and then they'll return back, later on in the year or next year or whatever. So I don't know if I'm rambling, but I
had a question. Have you
Yeah.
talked to anybody else that is, in your circle of friends or acquaintances that have also had encounters with these things?
One guy, and I was at the grocery store, and I don't even know his name, but I live in a pretty small town. Like, I can be up in the mountains in like 10 minutes. And he went on he went to the same area that I had the encounter with my wife, but he was on horseback, and he went probably 15 miles further in than I did. And he had a similar experience in his camping, but he had horses. And this guy's not a rookie. He's, jump on the horse and grab your rifle and head, 20 or 30 miles out and, come back with an elk, one of those kind of guys. And it scared the heck out of him too. And, we were at the grocery store, so he didn't like really go into a, really detailed story, but he told me that he had an encounter up in that area. And so all the encounters, including his and all 3 of mine, were all within 20 miles or less than each other, all of them. So
that's interesting. So they're, at least in that one area, it sounds like they come and go, or they're
the mountain range, the Uintas run east and west. And
okay.
they start around Provo, Utah, and they go all the way to Wyoming. And so where I'm talking about, we're maybe like, as the crow flies, max 30 miles from the Wyoming border. So it's pretty remote up there.
Yeah.
And gnarly and rugged and high, it's pretty high. So, it's true, real deal stuff where you can die, and, it snows up there in July. Most of us don't even try to go up there till June. Like Father's Day weekend's usually the earliest you can get up there because of the snowpack. so you don't have a lot of, get up there in middle, early part of June, and it's snowing again in September up there, So, it's only a short period of time where there's a lot of human activity, and then the road gets snowed in, and you can't even, there's like 10, 15 feet of snow on the road, and you got to clear it all off in the spring, So it's, in the summer it's used pretty good, but it's, it's such a pretty vast area that, it's not hard to get away from people up there.
Yeah, I've been in some of those areas up in Wyoming. It's very remote,
Yeah.
very beautiful. I love that rugged country, though. It's very nice.
Yeah. No, sir. Just I appreciate you giving me the chance to get it off my chest. I don't like really talking about it that much because I don't like getting teased. I haven't really been teased that much, but I have a little bit, and yeah. Well, I guess the last thing I would say would be that I've retired, and so now I have more time, and so I've been listening to a few of your programs on YouTube, and I am totally blown away at how similar the things that happen to us, how many other people are telling the same kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, it caught me off guard. I was like, whoa. I mean, I thought I was like the only one, and then I start hearing these other people, and I'm like, that's exactly the same thing. Wow. That's crazy. And so you probably didn't hear anything either, huh? Oh. Wow. Oh my heck. That sounds a little bit scary. How do you handle a situation like that, Yeah, well, that sounds like now that you're away from it, a neat experience, but, terrifying at the time, I'm sure. Yeah, I was amazed. I thought, like I said, I spent a lot of time just in denial, like trying to convince myself that it was a bear. Like the one with my wife, oh, that's a bear. But you know what? Bears don't throw rocks.
They don't gibber.
And they don't talk. And I've heard them. I've heard all different kinds of, bears bawling, whatever, This was nothing like that. This was, to me, was like a distinct, not a dial. I wouldn't say they have language, but it sounded like a male telling some other ones, get away from there, or go up there, or look out, or something. I don't know, but it was, yeah, that's what I think too. It's because it was like articulated, but it wasn't like,
It wasn't like
I couldn't really. It was kind of like, blah, 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 like that sort of, you know what I mean? But I could never reproduce it. But it was, it didn't sound like a bear. You know what I mean? It was more like choppy and it was bizarre. It was bizarre. So, anyways,
hey Tony, one thing I want to say is I think I know how you feel when you get on to a show like you're talking to Will and I. You're talking to a group of people where you don't have that hurdle of explaining and trying to convince somebody of what you saw, and that's a good feeling, right?
It is a good feeling, and yeah, it's like I thought I was the only one that had that type of experience, and that nobody would really believe me. And it's just a good camp. People, oh, that's a good story. Blah blah blah.
It's a different thing when you talk to fellow people who've had encounters.
Yeah, and then after listening to a couple of your episodes, frankly, I was shocked. I was like, this has really made me kind of feel good. I was like, oh man, so I'm not the only one. And then being able to talk to you guys, like you said, and, somebody that has some real knowledge is not, and can filter out the stuff, and you guys don't jump to conclusions, and, and it's just, yeah, I feel better about it now because I know that there's some people that get it, yeah, it's amazing. And so, like I said at the beginning of our conversation, I really feel like it's a privilege to get to talk to some guys at your level of research, and and just knowing who you rub shoulders with, it gets a lot of credibility there, and how you've carried the torch, and you haven't let the community down. That's I kind of think that's hard to find nowadays. Yeah. So I wish you guys the best of luck. And if I ever have anything else, or if I run into anybody that sounds like they got a legitimate story, I'm going to send them your way to add to the data. Yeah, I'm only like 90 miles from that Skinwalker Ranch, even, and Fairview Canyon's not too far from me. And I know there's been a few down there and down in that area. So yeah, I'm pretty close to all those. And my wife and I, we get out around there, down there. We get, the Skinwalker Ranch thing. I'm not into all that stuff, but it's just, Utah's got its share of strangeness. So, and yeah. But anyways, yeah, go ahead. I appreciate you. Yeah, well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope it helps somebody else and furthers the research in even a small way. It'd be an honor. So.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.